One person died and several others were injured on board a Singapore Airlines flight that encountered severe turbulence while on its way from London's Heathrow Airport to Singapore. The aircraft, which is a Boeing 777-300ER with a total of 211 passengers and 18 crew on board, was then later diverted to Bangkok, where it made an emergency landing. Local emergency crews from the Samitivej Srinakarin Hospital were on site. A slew of ambulance you could see on the visuals as people were transferred from the runway to the hospital for treatment. Videos posted online and on the line messaging platform by the Suvarnabhumi airport showed a line of ambulances streaming right down to the scene. Joining me on the broadcast is my colleague Karthik Malhotra from the newsroom. Karthik, over to you. What's the latest that you can help us with? How many people are injured? One person has had succumbed to this major air pocket that the aircraft hit. What more can you help the viewers with at the moment?
Not too many details, unfortunately, Kabir. Details are very sketchy at the moment, and this news is just breaking, so we are also awaiting details as they come in. But what we know for a fact is that this was a Singapore Airlines flight. This was Singapore Airlines SQ321, which was carrying 211 passengers and 18 crew members on board. Like you mentioned, the flight was flying from London Heathrow to Singapore, but encountered massive turbulence. And this is the exact statement from the Singapore Airlines company, which says that flight SQ321 encountered severe turbulence en route and had to then make an emergency landing in Bangkok. Now, obviously, air pockets is nothing new. Anybody who has taken a flight would have encountered air pockets, turbulence of some measure at some point in their lives. But such severe turbulence leading to a fatality and leading to 20 people getting wounded and one actually, succumbing to the turbulence and causing him his life is something which has been unheard of, at least in recent history. Now, we really don't know what exactly was this air turbulence, the reason behind this air turbulence. Was it an inclement weather? Was it perhaps, some technical failure at the airline? This, like you mentioned, is a Boeing 777-300. And obviously, the slew of bad news for Boeing continues because just earlier this year, you had the Alaska Air flight. It was a Boeing MAX variant, which actually had the door plug fly out. And that was obviously a big security lapse and a safety lapse. In this case, we don't know yet whether it's a technical failure or was it actually turbulence. But even if it was the latter, if at this stage we were to discount the possibility of this being a technical failure, because turbulence usually owing to technical reasons does not happen, even if it was weather, then at what point in the journey did this air pocket hit the aircraft? And were the pilots, was the airline, was the nearest ATC unaware of this weather pocket, or was there a communication lapse between the ATC and the pilots in the aircraft is something that we are still awaiting details on.
No, you're absolutely right, because even as we're awaiting the details into this mishap, and it's great to see that all the ambulances nearby, they were rushed, they were deployed onto the airport. Great to see those visuals as well. Not a lot of the fatality count is quite low considering this incident happened up in the air. But the safety culture crisis that you also threw some light on vis-a-vis Boeing and aviation safety, does it warrant a discussion? Does it warrant any kind of a prosecution? Even as the Boeing whistleblower that was also making headlines just a couple of days back, he's died by suicide. That's the police probe that's come out. Does it warrant a discussion on the safety culture crisis that Boeing is dealing with at the moment?
Undoubtedly, Kabir, and I think, that discussion is most warranted and discussions are undergoing, and so are the investigations and on what led to the blowout of the plug in the first place. But I think in this case, let's not jump the gun and be premature in deciding, for our viewers whether it was a technical failure on the part of Boeing or not. Perhaps it was just weather at the end of the day, but unannounced weather. It seems that the passengers who have been injured and one who has died were possibly not belted in their seatbelts. And that could have been one of the reasons why we have seen this sort of, injury rate and loss of life. While the number is one is way too many in this case. I mean, air travel is supposed to be the safest means of transportation, and this is not, it's not an air crash. It is not, something in which an emergency hard landing has happened, which has led to certain loss. In this case, it is air turbulence, something as regular and as simple as air turbulence. turbulence, which I just, I mean, I'm finding it hard to fathom the amount, the severity of the air turbulence, which has eventually led to, a person actually losing his life.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I'm imagining myself inside the cabin at the moment, Karthik, and I mean, I can't fathom myself a certain degree and level of turbulence that's going to, propel me from my seat onto the other seat. And we've seen those cases. I'm sure, you've been through air turbulence yourself, but simply unfathomable what we're picking up at the moment.
And unfortunately, Kabir, you have instances of the Atlantic Ocean being rogue, and flights that go from Heathrow to anywhere in the US that cross the Atlantic. These air pockets are not unusual. To this scale, to this magnitude, perhaps not, but that side of the world is a little more turbulent. But when you're talking about a flight coming from Heathrow to Singapore, you're pretty much on land most of the time. And the fact that the emergency landing was made in Bangkok makes one believe that Bangkok was the nearest airport, which means somewhere in the Indian Ocean, this sort of turbulence has hit the aircraft, and that is what has led to this sort of condition for the passengers in the aircraft.
Any other statement that's coming from the Singapore Airlines or from the Bangkok airport authorities at the moment, Karthik?
Nothing that I'm reading at the moment, Kabir. This news is just coming in. In fact, let me just refresh my feed and see in case there is any other statement. The only statement that did come from Singapore Airlines is something which I told you a few minutes ago, is that flight SQ321, I quote, encountered severe turbulence en route. This is the only part of the statement which is available with me at the moment, Kabir.
All right then. Many thanks, Karthik, for joining with us and helping us out with the latest details. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the big news that we're tracking for you at the moment. One person has died and several others were injured on board a Singapore Airlines flight that encountered severe turbulence while on its way from London's Heathrow Airport to Singapore. The aircraft, which is a Boeing 777-300ER with a total of 211 passengers and 18 crew members on board, was then diverted to Bangkok, where it made an emergency landing. Local emergency crews from Samitavej Srinakaran Hospital, which is nearby, were mobilized and rushed and deployed on site to transfer the injured people off the runway and the tarmac for treatment at this nearby hospital. Videos posted on the line messaging platform by Suvarnabhumi Airport. So the line of ambulance right now to the scene. One person has died, one passenger has lost their lives, whilst at least 30 others were injured.